Welcome to Chasing Curiosity TV. Subscribe and press the bell icon for more updates. Breaking news: tensions have erupted in the South China Sea, one of the world's busiest and most contested waterways. Chinese Coast Guard vessels have unleashed high-pressure water cannons against a Philippine supply mission, escalating a standoff that has been simmering for years. The world watches as these dramatic scenes unfold, raising fears of a wider conflict. The target of this latest confrontation is a tiny rusted ship, the BRP Sierra Madre, deliberately grounded by the Philippines decades ago to serve as a military outpost. Despite its battered appearance, this ship is a symbol of Filipino resistance, manned by a handful of determined soldiers who endure harsh conditions to maintain their nation's claim. The message from Beijing is unmistakable. This sea, with its rich resources and strategic shipping lanes, belongs to China. Through official statements and a growing naval presence, China asserts what it calls its historic rights, dismissing rival claims as illegitimate. We are live on the scene, witnessing what is rapidly becoming one of the world's most dangerous flashpoints. Journalists and observers risk their safety to document these tense encounters, as the eyes of the world turn to this remote but crucial region. Every day, the fragile peace is tested by acts of aggression, close calls, near collisions, and bold maneuvers that push two nations ever closer to a confrontation neither side claims to want. The risk of miscalculation is high, and a single incident could spiral out of control. On one side stands China, a global superpower with the world's largest navy and a rapidly expanding fleet. Backed by economic might and advanced technology, China projects power across nearly the entire South China Sea, determined to enforce its sweeping claims. On the other side is the Philippines, a nation with a proud maritime heritage but a much smaller, less equipped military. Filipino sailors rely on cameras, courage, and the backing of international law to stand their ground, documenting every encounter for the world to see. Their strategy is radical transparency. By broadcasting every Chinese maneuver, every act of intimidation, the Philippines seeks to rally global support and expose the reality of life on the front lines of this dispute. This is far more than a simple territorial dispute. It's a high-stakes geopolitical showdown with consequences that ripple far beyond Asia. The outcome will shape the balance of power in the Indo-Pacific and set precedents for how international disputes are resolved. The events unfolding here challenge the rules-based international order that has helped maintain peace and stability since the end of World War II. The world's diplomats and leaders now face a critical test. Can established laws and agreements withstand the pressure of rising nationalism and military might? It's also a test of alliances. The United States and the Philippines are bound by a mutual defense treaty, and joint military exercises send a clear signal of solidarity. But questions remain. How far will allies go to defend each other, and at what cost? The central question remains, will the future of this vital region be decided by international law, diplomacy, and cooperation, or by brute force and intimidation? The answer will echo across the world, shaping the course of the 21st century. Why does this vast expanse of water matter so much? At first glance, it might seem like just another stretch of ocean, but beneath its surface and across its waves, the South China Sea holds a significance that reaches every corner of the globe. The South China Sea is often called the world's economic superhighway. Every day, thousands of ships carrying everything from electronics and clothing to food and fuel navigate these waters, connecting manufacturers in Asia with consumers worldwide. An estimated 1/3 of all global maritime trade passes through these sea lanes. That's over $3 trillion worth of goods each year, making this region absolutely vital for international commerce and economic stability. Any disruption here, whether from conflict, natural disaster, or political tension, would send shockwaves through the global economy. Supply chains would grind to a halt, shelves could empty, and prices for everyday goods would soar, affecting billions of people. But it's not just about trade. The sea holds vast reserves of oil and natural gas, resources that are crucial for energy-hungry countries like China, which relies on these supplies to fuel its massive industries and growing population. For developing nations like the Philippines and Vietnam, these resources represent a path to energy independence and economic growth. Access to these reserves could transform their economies, create jobs, and reduce reliance on foreign energy. Beyond trade and resources, the South China Sea is a critical arena for military and strategic competition. Nations deploy warships and conduct exercises here, each seeking to assert their influence and protect their interests. For China, control of this waterway is central to its ambition of becoming the dominant power in Asia. Securing these routes and resources is seen as essential for national security and regional dominance. For the Philippines, this is about survival and sovereignty. The sea is a primary source of food, supporting millions of livelihoods, and is deeply woven into the nation's identity and history. The fight for the South China Sea is, for many Filipinos, a fight for their very existence, a struggle to protect their homes, their way of life, and their rightful place in the world. At the core of this dispute is a map that only China truly recognizes. The 10-dash line claims a massive portion of the sea as China's sovereign territory based on historic rights. This line overlaps with the legitimate maritime claims of several other countries, creating unavoidable conflict. Under UNCLOS, coastal nations are entitled to a 200 nautical mile exclusive economic zone. China's 10-dash line slices through these EEZs, creating a direct conflict of claims. The international community views China's claim as aggressive and legally baseless. By insisting on its 10-dash line, China challenges the rules-based order. For China, the line is non-negotiable. For its neighbors, it's an illegal fiction threatening peace. The 10-dash line is the philosophical and legal justification for China's actions in the region. China backs its 10-dash line claim with a massive campaign of construction and militarization. Using fleets of dredgers, China has created artificial islands with harbors, airstrips, and military facilities. These islands host long runways, advanced radar arrays, and naval facilities. China has built a network of unsinkable aircraft carriers and forward operating bases. Alongside island building, China deploys a formidable maritime force, including a large fleet of China Coast Guard ships. These ships are used for intimidation and harassment. Behind them is a maritime militia, a fleet of fishing boats that swarm disputed areas. This strategy, often described as salami slicing, creates a new reality on the water. China takes small, incremental steps, each too small to provoke a major military response. Over time, these actions add up to a major strategic victory, wrapping disputed areas in Chinese control. Beyond the headlines and high-level diplomatic maneuvering, this conflict has a devastating impact on ordinary people whose lives have always revolved around the sea. For them, the South China Sea is not just a map or a political talking point, it is their home, their workplace, and the source of their daily bread. For countless generations, Filipino fishermen have sailed to places like Scarborough Shoal, a traditional fishing ground that has sustained entire communities. These waters are woven into their history, their culture, and their identity. The knowledge of the tides, the best fishing spots, and the rhythms of the sea have been passed down from father to son, mother to daughter. But today, these fishermen are systematically denied access to the very waters their ancestors once freely navigated. Patrols and blockades have become a daily reality, and the sense of freedom they once felt on the open sea is now replaced by fear and uncertainty. Their small, weathered wooden boats are no match for China's imposing steel ships, which loom over them like giants. The contrast is stark, a humble fisherman's vessel dwarfed by the might of a foreign power. Imagine the anxiety of being a fisherman in a fragile boat suddenly confronted by a Chinese Coast Guard vessel. The sea, once a place of livelihood, now feels hostile and dangerous. Many describe being chased away, their paths blocked, and their nets slashed or confiscated. Each trip out to sea is a gamble, not just for their catch, but for their safety and their future. The economic consequences for these fishing communities are catastrophic. With fewer fish to catch and more danger at sea, their incomes have plummeted. Families that once thrived on the bounty of the ocean now struggle to make ends meet. In the past, a single successful trip could support a family for months, providing enough to pay for food, school fees, and other essentials. The sea was generous, and the community prospered together. Now, forced to stay closer to shore, the catch is meager. The shallow waters are quickly depleted and the fish are smaller and fewer. The once abundant nets now come up nearly empty, incomes have dropped dramatically, and families are left struggling to pay for even the most basic necessities. Children go to bed hungry, and parents worry about how to keep their families afloat. This is not just an economic loss, it is the slow erosion of a way of life. Boats sit abandoned on the shore, and the skills honed over generations risk being lost forever. The constant harassment and uncertainty inflict a deep psychological wound. Anxiety, frustration, and a sense of helplessness have become part of daily life. For many, it feels like an assault not just on their livelihood but on their dignity and national identity. Their pride as Filipino fishermen is under threat. These fishermen feel abandoned by those meant to protect them, forced to watch as a foreign power seizes what they know in their hearts to be theirs. The sense of injustice is overwhelming. The struggle in the South China Sea is not just a political dispute, it is a daily, grinding fight for survival, dignity, and the right to continue a centuries-old way of life. Each day, the sight of a tattered flag or an empty dock is a painful reminder of their nation's vulnerability, and of the uncertain future that lies ahead. Faced with China's aggression, the Philippines fought back in a court of law. In 2013, Manila launched a legal case against China under UNCLOS. The Philippines argued that China's 10-dash line had no basis in international law. China refused to participate, declaring the tribunal illegitimate. Despite China's boycott, the case moved forward at the Permanent Court of Arbitration. In 2016, the tribunal delivered a landmark ruling, a sweeping victory for the Philippines. The court declared no legal basis for China's historic rights claim. However, a legal victory is not the same as a victory on the water. Beijing rejected the ruling and continued its aggressive behavior. The ruling, while a monumental legal victory, has proven unenforceable. It highlights a fundamental weakness in the international system. Following the legal victory, the Philippines adopted a new strategy: radical transparency. Manila documents and publicizes every instance of Chinese aggression. They've embedded journalists on patrol and resupply missions. This strategy seizes control of the narrative, exposing China's actions. It's a powerful tool for shaming a global power on the world stage. The transparency campaign aims to rally international support. The Philippines demonstrates that this is not just a local dispute. This approach has helped galvanize support from key partners. The United States, Japan, and others have increased cooperation with the Philippines. The strategy strengthens alliances, especially with the United States. The Mutual Defense Treaty commits both nations to aid each other if attacked. This makes every confrontation more perilous, raising the stakes for Beijing. Two locations are primary flashpoints: Scarborough Shoal and the BRP Sierra Madre. Scarborough Shoal is a rich fishing atoll within the Philippine EEZ. In 2012, China seized control, blocking Filipino fishermen. The BRP Sierra Madre is a story of resilience and determination. It's a World War II-era ship intentionally run aground as a military outpost. The rusting vessel asserts Philippine sovereignty. Resupply missions to the Sierra Madre face dramatic confrontations. Chinese ships block these missions, preventing supplies and repairs. Each mission is a test of nerves, pushing both sides closer to miscalculation. The struggle over the Sierra Madre symbolizes the Philippines' refusal to back down. Every act of harassment pushes the Philippines and China down a dangerous path. The situation is a tinderbox, with the risk of miscalculation growing. The line between harassment and an armed attack is dangerously thin. The U.S.-Philippines Mutual Defense Treaty becomes critically important. The treaty obligates both countries to support each other if attacked. Washington has been increasingly explicit about its commitments. This American security guarantee is the ultimate backstop for the Philippines. China tests the limits of this treaty, trying to avoid triggering a U.S. response. It is a perilous game of chicken. The stakes could not be higher, involving the world's largest economies. A conflict would devastate the global economy and shatter regional stability. The world watches to see if diplomacy and deterrence can prevail.